Hey everybody, Matt here. Thanks for stopping by. In today's video, we're going to continue to look at SketchUp Free. Alright, welcome to SketchUp Free Part 2. This is a very beginner type tutorial. At the end of the first part, we had drawn two 2x4s and made them both or each a group. And now in this video, we want to modify one of these 2x4s to add some joinery. So the first thing I want to do is separate the two pieces. And I'm just going to move this piece sort of out of the way. I'm going to use the scroll button rather, to orbit around and scroll to zoom in, shift and scroll to pan. Okay. Now I'm going to right click this 2x4 and I'm going to choose explode. What that does is it no longer makes this part a group. When I click anywhere in the workspace, this part is now deselected. So what I want to do is make a cutout in this 2x4 so that this 2x4 can slide into it. So what I'm going to do is use the pencil so that I can draw some lines. And I'll call your attention to this box in the lower right hand corner. It's the length box, the length of the lines I'm going to draw. So I'm going to start right on the end point of my 2x4 and start going this way. I want my line to be 1.5 inches long because that's how wide a 2x4 is. So if I type in 1.5 inches, there's my end point for my 1.5 inch long line. Now if I left mouse click and start drawing down, I want this line to be 3.5 inches long. And then if I left mouse click again and move over here, I can see in the length box that the line I just drew is 1.5 inches long. Left mouse click and there's the lines. So click on the select button. Now I want to use the push-pull tool. Click on push-pull, click on this face, and move the mouse button. And I want that indentation to be 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch deep. So I type in 0.75, hit enter. I can hit my arrow key again, my select key, scroll to move around or orbit around, and now you can see I've got what would you call this, a rabbit or a notch that is the right size for this 2x4 to fit in. So if I zoom out, pan over, and select the move tool, I can take this endpoint. Well, before I do that, it's very important to make this a group again. So I'm going to select the whole thing from left to right, right mouse click, make group. Now I can use the move tool to move this endpoint right to that corner. Left mouse click again, hit my select arrow to cancel the move tool, use the scroll wheel to orbit around, and now I've got some very basic joinery. And it's not that difficult to do. It's actually pretty fun once you get the hang of using the tools. All right, so let me show you a mistake that I almost made. Let me go back to the move tool, click on move. I'm going to choose the corner of this part And I'm just going to separate them. I'm going to select my vertical part and I'm going to right click it and hit explode. So now it's no longer a group. Now let's move this part into that notch and see what happens. Click on the endpoint again, just like we did before. Click. Okay, there's my joint just as it was before. Now let's try and move these two pieces apart again and see what happens. You get this funky stuff happening here. And that's happening because we forgot to make the vertical part a group. If I hit escape or hit the arrow key, now let's hit the undo button. Bottom left hand corner of the screen, there's an undo button. Not sure if you can see it, but it says undo. I'm going to click it. That moved it. Okay, so now let's, from left to right, select the entire part. We'll right click it and we'll say, oh, I undid it so that I didn't have a group anymore. So let's redo it. I think it's still a group. Okay, so now it has been exploded, and I can tell because each one of these faces is individually selectable, including the edges, which is not what we want. So from left to right, if we select the whole part, right click, say make group, select anywhere to deselect that vertical part, choose the move tool, click on the endpoint, left mouse click again, use the scroll wheel to orbit around. There's our joinery. We grab the move tool again, and this time select the corner and then move this away. We don't get that funky stickiness we had before when this was not a group. So that's a very, very common error that beginners make, and in fact you saw me almost make it. So as you're playing around with SketchUp and trying to replicate what I just did here, remember to make each object its own group. That way when you move them together, they don't stick together. You can still move them independently. All right, that'll do it for this one.